Lincoln was legendary for his sense of humor and storytelling skills. He wasn't just a great speaker, he was a master conversationalist and a comedian. His wit was so famous that people actually published books of his jokes. Let me give you a taste. During a heated debate with Stephen Douglas, Douglas tried to smear him by calling him two-faced, basically calling him a phony and a hypocrite. Lincoln didn't get angry. He just smiled and shot back, "I leave it to you, the audience. If I had another face, do you honestly think I would be wearing this one?" He didn't just argue, he disarmed him with pure wit. Here's another classic. One day, Lincoln was walking down the street when a stranger stopped him and pointed a gun right at his face. The man said, "I swore an oath to shoot anyone I met who was uglier than me." Lincoln peered closely at the man's face, sighed, and said, "Well then, go ahead and shoot me. If I really look worse than you, I don't want to live another minute." He was almost obsessive about it. He constantly tried to make people laugh and lighten the mood, sometimes to a degree that seemed almost desperate. There was a time when one of Lincoln's sons was born. Now, he was famous by then, so you'd expect champagne and celebrations, right? But there sat Lincoln, looking absolutely miserable, just staring into space. People asked, "Abe, why the long face on such a happy day?" He just stared at the baby and mumbled, dark and gloomy, "I'm just worried. What if he grows up with one long leg like mine and one short leg like my wife's?" You have to remember, Mary Todd was a very short woman. That was just the kind of weird, dry humor he lived by every day. Now here is a verified fact. We know Lincoln was the people's president. Legend has it that whenever he passed a beggar on the street, he would empty his pockets and give them everything he had. Of course, the rumor mill went crazy. People started saying, "Oh, he literally gave the coat off his back." Come on, if he did that every time, he'd need a closet with hundreds of coats. He'd be under investigation just for his coat budget. But the part about emptying his pockets, that is true. He would literally turn them inside out. But here's the catch. Lincoln never carried a wallet. So when he saw a beggar, he wouldn't ask his staff for money. He'd specifically ask for coins. He'd whisper, "No bills, just give me the loose change." He'd dump those coins into his pocket, walk up to the beggar, and then, for dramatic effect, pull the lining of his pocket all the way out, shaking it to prove he was giving every last cent he had. Hearing this, some people get totally shocked. They say, "Wait a minute, that's not honest Abe. That's a con artist. That's just a manipulative performance." I remember something a professor told me back when I was a student. It stuck with me. He said that anyone who deeply researches Lincoln gets shocked exactly twice. The first shock comes when you realize the fairy tale version of Honest Abe isn't entirely true. The myths crumble. But the second shock, that hits harder. When you uncover the real man underneath the myths, you are absolutely floored by his actual greatness. So they say the cycle goes like this. You start as a fan, you get your heart broken by the truth, and then you emerge as an even bigger, die-hard fanatic. That was the saying back in the 70s. Not sure if it still holds up today, though. Nowadays, people are cynical. They might say, "Oh, it was all just a show, it's all fake." But trust me, if you really study the man, flaws and all, even the harshest critic ends up respecting him. He inevitably wins you over. Let's get one thing straight. Lincoln was a politician through and through. He wasn't some naive philosopher living in the clouds. That is exactly why he hated unnecessary conflict. Whether he had to crack a joke, talk his way out of it, or even surrender a point, he was an absolute genius at maneuvering his way to a compromise. He knew how to defuse a bomb with a smile. But make no mistake, he was usually the smartest man in the room. He read people, predicted their moves, and was always one step ahead of the competition. If politics is warfare, Lincoln never lost the initiative. He controlled the board. That's why he could make moves that seemed bolder, crazier, or faster than anyone else. He was striking before his opponents even knew the game had started. There was an Army colonel whose wife died in a tragic steamboat accident. Now you have to understand the era, nothing got done without pulling strings or asking for favors. He was desperate to recover her body, but was hitting brick walls. By chance, Lincoln was staying nearby, so the colonel went to him and begged for help. Now, imagine the pressure Lincoln was under. He's fighting a civil war, buried under a mountain of unimaginable stress, and suddenly someone barges in with a personal request. Lincoln just snapped. He exploded, yelling, "Do I have to deal with every single thing myself?" It was rare for Lincoln to lose his cool, but he was human after all. And honestly, anyone would have snapped in his shoes. No one would blame him for having a bad day given the circumstances. But here is the difference. The very next day, Lincoln tracked that colonel down. He looked him in the eyes and said, "I was wrong. I lost my temper. Please let me help you in any way I can." That is what a true leader looks like. If he felt he hurt someone, he fixed it. But notice something important. He offered zero excuses. He didn't say, "I'm stressed" or "the war made me do it." He just apologized and kept asking, "How can I make this right? Please forgive me." He was so persistent, so desperate to make amends, eventually the colonel had to forgive him. I think he was actually terrified of how nice the president was being. As I mentioned, when the Civil War kicked off, Lincoln's political nightmare went from bad to worse. Think about the position he was in. Zero military experience, zero clout in high society, and absolutely zero connections inside the military establishment. He was a fish out of water. Naturally, the public was panicking. For the first 2 years, every general Lincoln picked seemed to be a disaster factory. It was just defeat after defeat. It got so bad that both politicians and generals started whispering and then shouting that Lincoln was incompetent and needed to be removed from office immediately. Yet, even in that pressure cooker, Lincoln remained a master of human relations. He had this incredible ability to win people over, eventually turning his fiercest enemies into admirers. But even for a social genius like him, there was one man who proved to be the ultimate challenge. I'm talking about the arrival of his greatest rival, William Seward. William Seward, 1801 to 1872. Going into the Republican convention, he wasn't just a candidate, he was the undisputed king of the hill. A U.S. senator from New York, a 2-term governor. In terms of resume, raw talent, and leadership, he completely overshadowed rivals like Chase or Bates. He was in a league of his own. Look, guys like Salmon Chase or Edward Bates, brilliant men. They made excellent cabinet members or judges, but that was their ceiling. Seward was different. He was built for the Oval Office. He was presidential material through and through. Now, the million-dollar question, could he have navigated the nightmare of the Civil War and won? Honestly, I can't guarantee that, but in any normal timeline, without the war, Seward would have been a fantastic, above-average president, no doubt about it. When Lincoln took office, he offered Seward the top job, Secretary of State. You'd think Seward's massive ego would reject it, but he spun it differently in his head. He thought, aha, Lincoln knows he's incompetent. He's just a lucky accident. Fine, I'll take the job to run the country for him, even if it is beneath me. But it wasn't just Seward. Lincoln filled his cabinet with his enemies. Salmon Chase for Treasury, Edward Bates for Attorney General, Edwin Stanton for Secretary of War, and every single one of them thought the exact same thing. This guy is a joke. He won't last 2 years. When he crashes and burns, I'll be there to take the throne. So they played a double game. They did their jobs, sure, but they used their positions to boost their own fame while waiting for Lincoln to fail. Seward was the ringleader of this little club. His motto was basically, let's work together to get rid of Lincoln first, then we can fight each other for the crown. Honestly, there has probably never been a cabinet like this in history. The entire room was filled with men who wanted the boss's job and were actively betting on his failure. It was a snake pit. But here's the twist. These men were professionals and patriots. They didn't resort to dirty tricks or sabotage the country just to hurt Lincoln. They played it relatively fair. They just led the government rationally, fully convinced that Lincoln would naturally collapse on his own without their help. Now, don't mistake this for kindness. They just underestimated him that much. They thought, why get my hands dirty? He's going to destroy himself anyway. I'll just keep my reputation clean and wait for the inevitable implosion. The whole cabinet was thinking this, and Seward was leading the parade. 4 years passed. Lincoln won re-election, and more importantly, he won the Civil War. But tragedy struck immediately after. While watching a play at the theater with his wife, he was assassinated by a fanatical Southern sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth. But here is what many people forget. It wasn't just a hit on Lincoln. It was a coordinated decapitation strike. They thought if Lincoln dies, Seward takes over, so they sent a hit squad for him too. That same night, Seward was brutally attacked in his bed, hacked at until he was at death's door. Miraculously, despite the crude medicine of the time, he survived. When Seward finally regained consciousness, his first words weren't about himself. He asked about Lincoln. And he didn't ask, is he dead? Is the presidency mine now? No, he asked out of genuine, terrified concern for his friend. The people around him lied, telling him Lincoln was fine because Seward was in such critical condition. But Seward shook his head. He said, "Don't lie to me. If the president were alive, he would be standing right here by my bedside. That is the kind of man he is." And then he broke down and wept. On the day of Lincoln's funeral procession, Seward was supposed to be in bed recovering, but he dragged himself up, opened the window, and watched his rival turned best friend make his final journey. Lincoln climbed up from the absolute bottom, and physically, the man was a beast. Legend has it he never lost a fight in his youth. He beat up robbers. Before politics, he was technically a pro wrestler, but not the TV kind. We're talking gritty, back alley brawling for betting money. In 12 years, he only lost once. He was an undefeated champion. He was tall and had incredible core strength. He'd been doing hard labor since he was a kid. He might have looked lanky and awkward, but under that suit, he was pure wire and steel muscle. Today, politicians have consultants for everything. Wear this tie, look into the camera. Back then, none of that existed, but Lincoln didn't need them. Just as he pulled wisdom from books, he had a supernatural ability to mingle with people, read the room, and understand exactly what the masses were thinking. And his brain, it was frighteningly sharp. His judgment was instant, his wit was quick. Honestly, he was so smart it was almost annoying. He was clever to the point of being cunning, way too smart. When I say cunning, it might sound negative, but let's be real. Lincoln was no innocent saint. When it came to political showmanship, maneuvering, tactics, and creative traps, he was playing 3D chess while his opponents were playing checkers. He was always miles ahead of them. That cunning is exactly why I respect him. He was shrewd, yes, but he never used that intelligence to mock or trick the public. He didn't manipulate them, he just understood them with a cunning precision that no one else could match. What was truly mind-blowing about Lincoln was his intuition. He tapped into a hidden hunger within the public that no one else saw. He was famous for his speeches, yes, but he didn't just talk about taxes or roads. He appealed to justice and ideals. The elites scoffed. They said, the uneducated masses? They don't care about high-minded philosophy. It won't work. But Lincoln knew better. He knew that deep down, that was exactly the kind of leadership the people were craving. People don't reject justice. They just can't afford it. Life grinds them down. They think, I'm too busy surviving to be a hero. I have to compromise just to put food on the table. They feel trapped in a small, desperate life. And then Lincoln steps up. He doesn't say, I'll make your life a little easier. He says, I am offering you a chance to be part of something greater. I am inviting you to live a righteous life that you cannot achieve alone. Join me and let us build a nation that is truly beautiful and just. And the miracle? It actually worked. even when no one else believed it would. Lincoln's politics was a grand experiment in ideals, grounded in an unshakable faith in the people. Today, even in the most advanced nations, we've lost that faith. It's all about the blame game now. Politicians blame the voters, and the voters blame the politicians. But let's look back. Lincoln's era was the original Great Divide. People were swayed by demagogues, blinded by short-term greed, and fractured by race, religion, and region. It was a powder keg with bullets about to fly. In that darkness, Lincoln did the opposite. He spoke of ideals. He told the soldiers and the citizens, "You are better than this. You are worthy of choosing goodness over greed. You deserve to see righteousness win." And he didn't just say it, he gifted them that victory. That is why I believe Lincoln's life is the ultimate hero's journey. I honestly wonder, is there any politician in the world today who has the courage to take on a challenge like he did? People say his greatest achievement was ending slavery, but it's more than that. Before Lincoln, people said, "These United States are." After Lincoln, they said, "The United States is." He turned a plural collection of states into a singular nation. He forged true unity, and he never compromised on that goal. He had no diploma, but he mastered the art of moving hearts through books. He embraced the people and redefined the very meaning of democracy. In the 21st century, I think the world needs to look at Lincoln's light more than ever. Persecuted by his father as a child, abandoned by loved ones through death, a life shadowed by depression and political failure. Yet he never gave up. He walked toward the future with a humble heart. His leadership, his courage, and his dedication to human rights remain the gold standard for a true leader. I'll be back in an upcoming video with another story of a hero who offers wisdom for life. Thank you.